Hey everybody, ronarray here, and later in the league, Uber boss farming becomes much more juicy. But how can you farm Ubers if you have a mapping build, or for example your build is not too strong to fight them? In this video, I wanted to showcase crazy cheap bosser build that you will be able to use to farm Uber bosses on a very tight budget. I spent about 7 divines to set it up, so it can kill Uber Maven, it can kill Uber Exarch, it can kill Uber Eater, and if you will try harder, you might even kill Uber Heroes, even if I'm not really recommending it. That build can also do 200 million damage, which is absolutely amazing for the build that has only 7 divines invested in. But keep in mind that it's also completely ZHP, so it's been created only to fight particular bosses, because you just can't survive on maps with such build. Feel free to subscribe to the channel if you appreciate unusual builds, and let's go forward so I will be able to explain how it works and why it is so cheap. So for that build, we're going to use skills that have been used for Uber bossing for a very long time. It is Ice Trap. Ice Trap is working pretty nice, you're just throwing it on the ground, and then it's blowing itself up, dealing damage when the enemy is near or when the time passes. So we're going to utilize the mechanic with power charges to maximize our damage even on a budget. However, Inner Conviction has a downside. We can't gain frenzy charges because we're going to get power charges instead. But to use frenzy charges, we're going to use Relicash Impatience boots. Those are going to give us count as having maximum number of frenzy charges, so we always will count as at maximum. And to get more frenzy charges, we're going to use Badge of the Brotherhood, so our maximum frenzy charges will be equal to our maximum power charges, making our damage even higher. And for the power charges, we're going to generate those ourselves. Charge Trap support is give us chance to gain a power charge when your trap is triggered by an enemy. And we can also use Master Sapper as an anointment. It gives 15% chance to gain frenzy charge when your trap is triggered by an enemy. But since we can't get frenzy because of the Inner Conviction, we're going to gain power charge instead. That way our damage needs a little ramp up at the start of the fight because we're generating the power charges, but after we got those up, the damage should be absolutely great. And we will also spend all possible ways, such as Fullborn Dialas, for example, to get our Ice Trap to as high level as possible. And my current Ice Trap is currently level 28, which is pretty good. So it's practically a power charge stacker with a few trap mechanics on top to maximize the damage. And our Ascendancy, which is Occultist, is going to help us a lot. And as the last part of our damage setup, we're going to use Pain Attunement and reserve most of our life to always stay on the low life and get Pain Attunement bonus. And we can also get additional aura from the minion, which is Summon Lightning Golem, for example, together with Haste. Since we will fight only bosses, we don't really care about survivability of that minion. So here I have a completely naked character and we're going to start building it from scratch. And the first thing we will need is Militant Faith Timeless Jewel. For that jewel you need to just get Converted by High Templar Dominus, and you can also get Elemental Damage per Devotion and Area Damage per Devotion. Both of them together will be a little too expensive, so you can just set it to 1 and buy any of those. Another important thing to check is if it's working out with your PoE. So make sure that you're copying your jewel to PoE before you're buying that and investing your money. And when you're adding it, it's going to change the passives around to the heated devotions and basic stuff like that, so variation of devotions. You need to make sure that your jewel is not changing Heart of Ice, Breath of Rime, Instability. So all those 3 passives should be the same. Try to add different jewels from the market to your path of building and check which one of them are working out properly for you. And you also need to get Inner Conviction because it's going to give us a pretty big amount of damage. So next step, going to be the rings, and for rings we will need to get Fallborn Ramirez Banquet, with +1 to maximum power charges, which is pretty important. You can go for 22-23 global critical strike multiplier, and you can get them approximately for 80 chaoses, which is a pretty decent price. You can go for 25 multiplier, but that will cost more than the divine, and we don't really need it at the moment. So after you got the rings, you can also prepare them, and I recommend to at least use Blessing Orbs to get 30% global critical strike chance, and after you hit 30, you can just use Unstable Catalyst and those as well, because it's going to improve both multiplier and critical strike chance. But mind your budget, so if you don't have additional currency for it, you don't really need to invest additional money, because it's just going to give you only like 4% of global critical strike multiplier in general, and it's not too important. And the next step is Heat Shiver. For Heat Shiver, it's pretty important to get +1 to maximum power charges. Everything else play no role, so just set the implicit, and right here I have a Heat Shiver for 1 divine. So I think it's pretty cheap. It could go a little up at some particular situations, but most of the time it should be around 1-2 divines and not more. But that 1 power charge is going to give you tremendous amount of damage, so make sure that you have it. And the next step is body armor, which is probably going to be one of the most expensive things in the build. So we're going to run Fallborn Diala's Malefaction with +1 level of socketed gems. So generally, I recommend to just get like 6 link right here. You can also set it to Fallborn. And you can get no gems can be socketed in this item, ignoring socketed color. So that is going to be replaced, and that's what are you going to end up with. We have multiple Dialas like that for 3 divines, and I'm absolutely sure that at the moment this is worth it. However, it will still require a little recolor, but generally I'm probably going to go for that one. As the weapon, we are going to use Annihilating Light Quarterstaff, and right here you don't need anything, and you can practically take any 5 linked one, because we will need to use 5 links to set our auras in, and we can get one for like 90 chaoses, which is very cheap in the current economy. So as the belt, we are going to use Archon Tools, and right here you just need increased effect of non-damaging elements inflicted by skitterbots, and if you can get a little higher increased trap and mine throwing speed, it will be nice, but it's not too important at the moment, so just get high effect of non-damaging, and you don't really care much about mana reservation anyway. You can also get the main skill level 21 for very cheap, it's only 14 chaoses, and you don't really care about additional support, so you can just roll with 14 chaoses 1. For the gloves, we're going to use Architect Hands, Ambush Mitts. And the most important part here just increases in reductions to cast speed, also apply to trap throwing speed. But if you can get like higher % of chance to throw additional traps or less reduced trap throwing speed, it will be alright. So I think I'm going to get that one for 80 chaoses, because I believe it's pretty cheap at the moment. Just make sure that there's no bad corruption, which will make the gloves unusable for you. For large cluster jewels, we can just go with basic jewels that has cold damage, some additional damage, and added small passive skills effect. You can get those for like 8 chaoses, which is very cheap. And if you want to invest more, you can always improve the numbers a little, making damage 4% and small passives 40. And as a small cluster jewel, we will need Guerrilla Tactics and Surprise Sabotage. That way we will be able to get more damage, and we will need at least 2 of them, so about 70 chaoses per each, as you can see at the moment. So for the jewels, we can just buy any set of kobolds or any other kind of jewels that will have global critical strike multiplier, together with critical strike multiplier with cold skills. And the last stat could be anything for damage, so that's pretty much my search. And as you can see, there's some on the market for like 15 or 20 chaoses approximately. So you can go with cast speed right here or area damage if you want to pay a little more. At the moment, I'm probably going to buy most of them, since we will need a few. So after setting everything up, I expect clusters to be approximately 160 chaoses, so larges are like 10, and we will have 2 small ones. And the rest of the juvels will need at least 4 of them right here, and 5th to the right. So all of them together is probably going to be approximately 100 chaoses. As the boots, you can pretty much get any relic ash impatience with frenzy charges. Just make sure it's frenzy, because we can't generate frenzy charges in any other kind of way. So relic ash with frenzy is absolutely mandatory for our damage. Make sure that you have it, and it's pretty cheap at the moment, so about 20 chaoses as well. And as last part of the build, the Amulet, we're going to get Badge of the Brotherhood, because it's going to give us maximum frenzy charges equal to our maximum power charges. You don't need any corruption on that, so you can get it for practically only 20 chaoses. And you can also get a pretty cheap Anoint to avoid anointing Whispers at the moment, because Whispers will cost you about 3 divines just from the Anoint itself. So instead you can just go to the game and you can anoint something very simple, such as Saboteur, or for example Master Sapper. Both of them are working pretty good. I think in general I would probably prefer Master Sapper if you have a little higher budget, but Saboteur is going to be a completely cheapest option available. So after all the calculation, everything that I got for that build worth approximately about 7 divines. With price fluctuation, I think it could maybe go a little higher, so it will be like 8 divines, but most of the time it's still going to be very cheap. And it's practically an Uber bosser that you can use to kill Ubers under 10 divines, which been an initial goal. So another interesting question is what to do if somehow the boss will be able to kill your character with some unpredictable attack. It might happen from time to time, especially on bosses like Maven that has a lot of stages. So in that case, you will need to just re-enter the fight, but instead of going closer to the boss, you need to just throw your traps from a distance, trying to deal as much damage as possible to finish the fight or bypass the stage to feel better on and finish it a little later. Generally, Ice Trap build will be able to rejoin the fight without a lot of issues, and most of the time you're going to just finish it absolutely fine. I never failed a single Uber boss doing it out of the ones that I tried. And talking about other bosses, such as Cirrus for example, I generally don't recommend farming them because I believe it will be harder to avoid attacks there, so most of the time you need to just focus on Maven, Ether and Exarch, keeping in mind that the build is completely ZHP. But otherwise, I hope that build will be able to help you out to farm some Uber bosses or just kill them for the achievement. Thank you very much for watching and see you next time. ronarray out.